Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for a virtual sneak preview of Vesterheim's newest exhibit, An Artist's Journey, Carl Homstad, 50 Years. My name is Molly Thompson, and I'm the Annual Fund Gift Officer at Vesterheim, the National Norwegian American Museum and Folk Art School located in Decorah, Iowa. We are all in for a wonderful evening, and together we're going to get to hear from Carl Homstad about this retrospective exhibition of his work that opens at Vesterheim this Saturday, June 5th. Carl is going to be giving you all a virtual gallery tour in just a moment. And then after that, we're going to have plenty of time to take your questions and have a discussion about this exhibit. So please use that Q&A section to ask your questions. And next, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Diane Brondike, who is the Director of Development at Vesterheim.
Thanks, Molly. And thank you all for connecting online with us tonight as we celebrate the opening of this exhibit, An Artist's Journey, Carl Homstad, 50 Years. We have almost 200 guests signed up for this program this evening. And while it's not quite time for us to be together inside the gallery for an event like this, we do hope that after seeing this sneak preview tonight, you'll come to Decorah if you're able and see the exhibit in person. It opens to the public this Saturday, June 5th, and will be open at Vesterheim through May 30th of 2022. Vesterheim's main building and museum store are now open daily from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and we look forward to seeing you soon. All of us here at Vesterheim would like to thank our generous sponsors of this exhibit. They are William and Kathy Wild, Decorah Bank and Trust, and a sponsor who wishes to remain anonymous, with additional support from Peggy Beatty, Brenda Carlson, Mary Jo Finholt, Barb Govley, Melinda Hansen, Elia Jordan, Chris Kratz, Elise Mullen, Linda Quass, Leslie Sand, and Joanne Voltmer. Thank you for caring about Vesterheim, and thank you for making this exhibit possible. We are also grateful to those who have lent artworks for this exhibition: Carl Homstad, James and Susan Banks, Daryl and Norma Jean Bosma, Bill and Claire Hartman, Joe Homstad, Kirill Henderson, and Bruce Larson. As you can see, many generous people were involved in making this a special event. In other news, we're excited to announce that Vesterheim Folk Art School is reopening on September 1st for on-site classes. A class schedule will be available in July, and details about our COVID-19 responses and policies can be found at vesterheim.org. There are still lots of opportunities to connect with Vesterheim online, and registration for online folk art classes is happening now for classes scheduled through September. Registration for October through December classes will launch on July 20th. So whether you visit us online, in person, or at events taking place later this summer, we look forward to seeing you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Vesterheim's Chief Curator, Lorraine Gilbertson.
Thank you, Diane. It's my great pleasure this evening to introduce Carl Homstad. Carl was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, and moved to Decorah to attend Luther College, and he's been here in Decorah ever since. He might be best known for the murals in communities in Iowa and in the Midwest. 3 of his murals are within spitting distance of Vesterheim. But his 50-year career spans far beyond the walls of the buildings his murals adorn. We are very excited to share this exhibition. Not only will you get to see examples of Carl's body of work, but you'll have the opportunity to learn about his creative processes, his career as an artist, and his personal journey. Thank you for taking us all on these journeys with you. Now, Carl Homstad.
Hello, and welcome to Vesterheim in beautiful Decorah. And what we've decided to do for this introduction, because it's virtual, is to pick some scenes from the exhibit, and then I'll talk about those a little bit. And, for example, this painting behind me is one of the pictures we chose to represent the artist journey exhibit. And one of the reasons is because I like the fire kind of indicates inspiration. And then it's a wild place called Meat Cove, which is on the very tip of Cape Breton Island and looks out over the St. Lawrence Seaway where it meets the Atlantic Ocean. And the other picture you saw in the beginning was from New Zealand, and that was a place called Doubtful Sound. And it was named by James Cook because when he discovered it, well, when he was the first European there in a sailing ship, he didn't go in there because it was doubtful if he could sail back out again. So anyway, the basic exhibit has three themes. It has a lot of major artworks from my whole 50 years. But in addition to that, I've decided to take the idea of journeys a little farther. And one of the aspects that I'm doing is the journey of my life as a person. And then another one is the journey of my career as an artist. And then also my journeys that I've taken around the world. This painting here is my wife and I camping on the Isle of Skye on our honeymoon. And she was making coffee by the tent. And if you look at the, there's a little white rectangle that's my easel where I would set up and paint watercolors as we traveled around Europe. And I sold the watercolor, but I did this painting many years later based on a photo I'd taken that day. So like I said, the first theme is about my life. And for me, being an artist isn't just a job. It isn't something that you quit when you leave this, when I leave the studio or at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a way of life. And I believe, that you should make the world you want and then move into it. And I literally did that in a way. With friends from college, Luther College, we started a cooperative community called Springwater Village, which is located north of Decorah. And with their help, I built my own house. I designed and built my own house and studio and gallery. And there's, you can see here some documentation about that process, floor plans and other things. And so the exhibit goes beyond just paintings and different kinds of prints. So, and other things I do is, because I'm an artist, I've pretty much illustrated my whole life, and I've brought out some of those more personal pictures. And that includes a whole wall of self-portraits. And so, kind of one every 3-4 years. I've done an awful lot of self-portraits, and most artists do. And the one reason for that is whenever you feel like doing one, you have a very willing subject that's very cooperative and will sit there as long as you need to have yourself stay there. So it's a very convenient way to do a portrait. So and so the second part of my journey is the journey of my career as an artist. And a lot of people ask me, how can you make a living making art, including my dad. And the way I've done it is by combining a lot of different things that I could do to make money. And the main one was woodblock printmaking. I've been making woodblock prints since I first came to Luther and studied with Professor Orville Running, and I still make them to this day. And there's a lot of information in the gallery. There's blocks, and you see in this picture, there's the blocks that make up those parts of a print there in the frame. And there's a video about how I make woodblock prints. Brad said there's several in Decorah. I think I have 7 in Decorah. I've painted more than 50 of them around the Midwest. And in addition to pictures of several of the murals, like you see here, I have some drawings of that I used, to make the murals from, and I have some pictures of me painting murals and so on. And so that's another aspect of the career part of the journey. And then the third part of the journey is the voyages, or the actual journeys I've taken around the world. And it pretty much started when I spent my junior year abroad from Luther College studying art in Vienna, Austria. And I painted this picture there, and I fell in love with landscapes, and particularly romantic landscapes. And there was great art to be found in Vienna and all across Europe. And I traveled quite a bit around Europe, and my roommate and other friends would make it a point to always go out on the full moon. Every time there's a full moon, at least go out walking in the Vienna woods and maybe go camping if there was a weekend. And I've loved the night ever since. And I think you'll notice in the exhibit, there's quite a few pictures in the moonlight and at night. And so I find it really fascinating. And so then when I was, living here after I graduated, I would go back to Colorado a lot to visit my parents when they were still there, and my friends, and we would explore the back country of Colorado. This is Mount Evans, and we would a lot of times go climb a windswept ridge, carrying our skis, and then cross-country ski back down and camp and hike in the mountains. And we also, I also traveled other places. One major trip I took was down the Grand Canyon. I floated down the Colorado River, down the Grand Canyon, with a person several of you may know. Phil Oden is a friend of mine. He's a wood carver who does a lot of things with Vesterheim, including teaching wood carving classes. And anyway, it was a 2-week trip, and you have to take a 2-week trip, because once you get in at Lee's Ferry, there's no other road or access to the river for 2 weeks. And you can get out halfway at Phantom Ranch and walk out, but you can't get the gear and the boats and everything out until you've gone all the way down to the end of the canyon. So I've also always had an interest in Asian art, particularly, the Japanese woodcut woodblock prints are fantastic, and I've always admired them. But I kind of wanted to get to look a little deeper, a little earlier. So my roommate in college was a travel agent, and I named Neil Burkett. I said, "So Neil, I want you to think of the greatest trip in the world and take me with you." And he said, "China." He immediately said China. So he set up a great trip that we were in China a little over 2 weeks. And these are pictures from Beijing of the Great Wall just outside of Beijing and Badaling, and then also of the Forbidden City. And also in that trip, we made it to Tibet and had a great time. And I've also traveled to Japan, and there's pictures of Japan. But my most recent trip has been to New Zealand. And one of the things I really love about Asian art is ink wash paintings. And that's what this is. They call it sumi-e. And what it is, basically, it's just black ink and paper and water. And I've done over 300 sumi-e or ink wash paintings. this is a painting of the van that my daughter and I rented, and we drove around the South Island of New Zealand for a couple of weeks. And I've selected probably, well, there'd be a dozen of the best of those ink wash paintings are also in the exhibit. And I want to, I'm hoping you can come and see the thing in person. This is a picture of a place just outside of Decorah called Heritage Valley. And you can see, those of us from here know how beautiful the area around Decorah is. But if you haven't been in this area, I certainly encourage you to come and check out the natural beauty of the place and visit Vesterheim, possibly see my show. It will be up till next Memorial Day. And we're thinking of having other events connected with the show too, like maybe specific virtual tours that cover like the life aspect of the journey, maybe another one for the career one, if for particular for people that are interested in that, a career in art, and then one maybe just specializing in the travel aspects. So I want to say Tusen Talk to the wonderful staff here at Vesterheim. They've done a terrific job of helping me get this all set up and ready for people to visit. And once things settle down, I would plan on having an in-person opening. And Loran will tell you a little bit more about some of the other possible events coming up. And so I encourage you to stay tuned to Vesterheim.org. And I will be here to answer your questions as long as you like, I guess. So once again, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Carl, for being part of this event for Vesterheim this evening and for sharing your work through this exhibit. It's really fascinating to hear about just a few of these pieces, and I know there's just so much more to see in the gallery itself to learn about those journeys that you talked about. So thanks for giving us a little bit of a sneak peek at that. And like you mentioned, we've got time now to take questions from the audience. So this is the time to share those into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And we'll go ahead and get started here, but continue placing those questions that you have as they come up. So Carl, I know you're going to be demonstrating at Nordic Fest this summer in Decorah, which the fest itself is taking place July 22nd through 24th. So what will visitors see when they come to your demonstration table at Nordic Fest?
Well, actually, they'll probably see a lot of similarity to the booth I've had there next to the door at Vesterheim for 40 years, or at Nordic Fest. And for the demonstration, what I'll be doing is inking a block and printing a black and white print. So I'll ink the block and then put the paper on, rub it with a wooden spoon, and then make a woodblock print, or print a woodblock print. And there'll be other things there that explain how they're made. And I will also, I have a bin full of my other woodblock prints that will be for sale. And then I usually have a rack of cards that I sell of my paintings and prints, and, just talk to people and enjoy the fest. So.
That sounds great. So people should come and find you, come and say hi.
Yeah. Some people I see every year, and it's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. One of the fun things about the fest for sure. So Carl, I'll take us back here to kind of the beginning. What age did you start painting?
Well, I thought of putting it in the show, but I didn't. But my mom kept a painting I did in '63. I think I was 12, that I painted of our home in Denver on an old piece of bed sheet. And that was one of my first oil paintings. But even in elementary school, I did lots of drawing. I would draw kind of constantly. And my art teachers really liked me and what I did. So And, when we go to church, I'd fill up all the communion cards with drawing. And even when I got to college, I was drawing so much in my notebooks that I started taking my notes in my sketchbooks. So that's, I've always loved art since I was little.
Carl, we have a question from Karen. She says, as an artist, do you remember your first sale and what it was?
Yes, I do. I was in high school. Maybe I had other little ones, but I had done a great big painting of the mountains in a high school painting class, and a friend of my mother's wanted to buy it, and so I said, "Oh, great, yeah, you can buy it." And then, I quoted her a price that I thought was, a lot of money, and then she said, well, I'd like to have it framed. And so I paid for the frame, and it turns out that most of the profit went up, for the frame. But, that was the beginning of my career. And really another aspect I cover in the exhibit is I always wondered, why I could get all the way through college with a degree in art and never learn anything about business. And so I was really lucky to have friends that were good businessmen and good salesmen, and they tutored me in some of the theories and techniques of business, which really has helped me out over the years.
Cheryl is writing from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she admires your murals. She says Santa Fe is a city with many murals, most of which involve painting by the community. Are your murals community events?
No, I'm afraid mostly they're not. We have had some interesting community events at them. For example, one time, part of the mural was a tree, and then we thought, we could use handprints for the leaves of different colors. And so a person had this large stairs that was on wheels, and we got a whole bunch of volunteers together, and we told anybody in town that they could come walk up the stairs, put their hand in the paint, and then put their hand, on the mural, and then get it washed. There was buckets and people to help them wash the paint off. And about 300 people came, and people brought their babies, and they put their feet in the paint, and, and so this one mural has a lot of, community help in it. But no, and sometimes, there'll be an afternoon where some kids can help paint, but normally I do it myself, and a lot of that is because there's a lot of liability involved with people getting up on ladders, and mostly I tell people, when they're hiring me to paint a mural, that I can do it in 2 weeks by myself, or 3 weeks if they help me.
Yeah, sometimes it's faster to do things yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got a couple questions here about your time studying at Luther College. So did you know that you were going to study art when you arrived at Luther?
Yes. Yeah, I did. I came for a couple reasons. One is because of I love the topography and the, scenery around Decorah, the wildness and the nature everywhere. Unlike, Denver is in, Colorado, and the mountains are nearby, but it's really a big city. And, and they had a good art department. I mean, they've had a good art department, and I enjoyed, meeting Professor Running and Doug Eckhart and Dean Schwartz and Laredo Adelman. Some of you know, was the art history teacher when I was there. And then, having that opportunity to spend my junior year in Vienna really made a big difference too.
And then a question here from Tim. Did you study all the different media that you use today when you were in college, or did you teach yourself some of them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I have just started doing a lot of digital drawing, and there's a lot of digital drawings in the show and on my iPad. And there was no iPad when I was in college. I mean, computers, were the size of a room. And so that is one thing I have definitely just started from scratch. But it's interesting that programs like Procreate and Photoshop use layers, and my experience as a printmaker has really helped me a lot in understanding how to use layers and color. And so and I learned a lot in college, probably most the basics of all the things, but I kind of quit teaching drawing because I would say, okay, here I can teach you the basics of drawing, but if you practice diligently for a decade or so, you'll start to understand. And they kind of look at you like, what? But I've learned the basics, but I've also taught myself a lot. And I think probably the main thing that I do is I go to museums. I've been to museums. Everywhere I travel, I go to art museums and look at other work. And so, I would say I got the basics, but I've also learned a lot, in the meantime.
Kristen would like to know what artists have influenced you.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, it kind of depends on the medium. In woodblock printmaking, there, a lot of people think of the older ukiyo-e prints like Hiroshige and his era, but I really love the shinhanga, which are more modern Japanese prints, particularly the ones of an artist named Kawasa Hasui. And so as far as that goes, he's my favorite. And as far as painting goes, I would say Winslow Homer. I love Winslow Homer's paintings and especially his watercolors. And when it comes to drawing, I think Van Gogh was one of the greatest people with a pencil you ever saw. So it kind of varies, to which medium. And I love Rembrandt's etchings, and so and I get something out of a lot of different artists, but they're my favorites.
Uwe would like to know, what is your favorite piece? I'm not sure if he means which piece by other artists or by yours. Maybe you could answer both.
Well, as far as my piece goes, it's the last one I just finished. And then I kind of forget about them, and then I'm interested in the next one. So I'm always I'm always trying to improve them. So, it's pretty much the last one I've done. And there are so many wonderful pieces, that I could think of that I've loved. It would be really hard to pick one and be like picking your favorite child, I guess, or something. But, I love, like I said, I like different pieces depending on the medium. So, but there's some great art just about everywhere you go if you kind of look around for it.
Maria is wondering, or maybe it's Marla here, from start to finish, how long does it take to make one of your woodblock prints?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Basically, I start with either color pencil drawing or a watercolor, and that takes generally a day or so to make. And then I transfer that to what I call the key block, which is the one that has the most color. And that usually takes just about a week to carve that block. And then the tint blocks are the ones that add color into that key block, like pieces of the puzzle. And they generally take a day or two each. So a couple weeks to carve the block. But then it usually takes maybe another week or so of printing the blocks to get all the different colors right. Because if you print 3 of the blocks and then you print the 4th one and you don't like that color, then you start over, and then, and you have to keep track of, what each block is doing. And so I kind of mess with the colors for about another week. So maybe a little over 2 weeks there. And then just to print each one takes about 45 minutes and over a period of 4 days. So I ink the block and print it. It takes about 10 minutes. Then I let the paper dry overnight, and then I print the second block. And so it's not 45 minutes in a row, but over 4 days, it takes about 10 minutes each block. And then, so it takes 45 minutes to print one. So
Okay.
They're kind of labor intensive. Huh?
It's a lot more of an involved and lengthy process than I would have thought, but thanks for explaining that for us. Okay, Donna Lundstrom wants to know, what is your secret to painting such beautiful clouds? I love your clouds. And Donna says that she's your contact in Vinton for a mural there, and she struggles with painting clouds. So she wants to know a quick secret.
Okay, well, I painted a lot of clouds, and I've also studied weather and what causes the clouds to be this way or that way. And the main thing about clouds is that people think of them as like a big ball of cotton or something, but they're really kind of ragged edges, and there's a lot of different colors in the clouds besides just white and gray. And another thing that is tricky with clouds is there's a terrific amount of perspective in clouds that you maybe wouldn't expect. But if you have those little kind of, I call them army clouds that sort of line up in a little row, rows across the sky, those they get smaller and smaller and smaller towards the horizon, and they converge on a vanishing point, and they also are affected by the atmosphere. So, I mean, mostly it's just a matter of observing them and painting them many times, and just luck, I guess, too. But it's a lot of it is just practice painting. And like, some people are really good at portraits, which I'm not particularly. But if you do a lot of one thing, you get better, and that's me and clouds. My daughter used to make fun of me, and she'd draw a little picture with a cloud and a tree and a water and say, "There, that's all you paint all the time." So it's kind of true.
Joanne would like you to talk a little bit about the travel that you did in Iowa with musician Greg Brown.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I was lucky to be on a thing that Iowa Arts Council put together way back when I was just out of college in the late 70s. And it was called the Touring Art Team. And the assistant director of the Iowa Arts Council at the time had this idea of sending a team of artists into little towns in Iowa. And they had to be less than 1,500 people. And that's pretty small. I mean, that's like Ridgeway, or if you're from around here, but it's a small town, because she felt like they were kind of neglected, and and it's true, they didn't get much out of the state arts funding. So the team consisted of a couple artists. I oftentimes would either do watercolor or printmaking with styrofoam prints. And another artist might do crayons or so on. And then there was a poet, and there was always a musician. And Greg was the musician with me on that team. for 5 years. And then there was a dancer and sometimes a photographer. But anyway, there was about 7 of us, and we were all professional artists in our fields. And we would drive to the town in the morning. We'd have a big lunch provided by the people. We'd set up in a fire hall with the engines backed out, or in a park if it was nice. And then we would teach a class that afternoon for a couple hours. And I would do art, and Greg would do songwriting with his class, and the dancer would, teach dancing and so on. And then the first night we were there, we would put on a show, and I would show me and the other artists, visual artists, would show slides, and the dancer would dance, and Greg would sing some songs, and the poet would read some poetry, and so on. And then the next morning we'd have another couple hours of class in the morning, and a couple hours of class just on picnic tables, outside. And then the second night, the townspeople would put on the show, and the dance class would dance, and we'd hang up the pictures from art. And it was just a great program. And I'm sorry to say it doesn't exist anymore, but that's how I got to know Greg, and we've been friends ever since.
Wonderful. Rose would like to know what your favorite part of New Zealand is.
Oh boy, that's tough. I'd have to say, in fact, that picture I showed at Doubtful Sound was that they have a state. It's a region in New Zealand called Fjordland, and it is, it's just like the fjords in Norway. And I think I like that the best. There's Milford Sound and Doubtful Sound, and there's several other sounds that are so remote you can't even hardly get there except by boat. So I really was impressed with that. But there's so many beautiful things there, and it's quite a remarkable island because it's not very wide, and you can go from kind of the desert on the dry side, and then up through up over the mountains and into a rainforest on the other side, and just 3-hour drive, and it just all kinds of topography and great interesting animals, penguins, and other big sea creatures, sea lions, and great culture in the Maori culture. And anyway, it would be really hard to say, but I really liked the South Island. It was one of my favorite trips.
Well, that sounds really nice. Before we all start wishing we were in New Zealand instead of where we're at, Karen wants to know, when I visit Decorah, besides Vesterheim, where could I see your work?
Agora, the Artisans Marketplace, is a gift shop and gallery in the hotel. It's in the same building as the Winneshiek Hotel, and they have a pretty complete selection of my woodblock prints there. And I have a gallery out in the country, and I'm open by appointment, and I'm in the phone book. And if you want to call me up, I'd be happy to show you around out there if I'm around.
And I'm assuming you've got a website that people can go to get your contact information and get in touch with you?
Yeah, carlart.com, CARLART.com, and I'm on Facebook.
Great.
There's a Carl Homstad Studio and Gallery Facebook page.
Okay. And we can put some of that into the follow-up email that people are going to get too.
Okay.
Uva wants to know, what do you prefer, copper or wood prints?
I prefer woodblock printmaking. I did a lot of etchings, and there's a lot of etchings. Well, not a lot, but there's a few etchings in the show. But I found that etching involved a lot of pretty caustic chemicals, acids and other things, and fumes, and pretty much with woodblock you just have turpentine, and I can deal with that by using respirator and ventilation and so on. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to concentrate on woodblock printmaking, I guess. That's what I've done.
Ellen asks about some of the murals that you have in Decorah and elsewhere. She knows that some of those have had to be restored and wonders if aging is a big problem with murals.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely, I mean, when people ask me to paint a mural, and they ask how long it'll last, I tell them it's just like painting your house. I mean, it's outside in the weather and you're using house paint, and it's going to look good for 5 years, and then between 5 and 10 years it'll have to be touched up and then probably redone after 8-10 years. And I've had a pretty good career just touching up my murals. So I've repainted the one in Calmer, I think 3 times, and I've touched up the ones in Decorah at least 2 or 3 times each, and repainted most of them a couple of times. So no, they're not permanent by any means, and I make that clear right up front. And if they want something permanent, you almost have to go with like a true fresco, which I don't know if hardly anybody would be able to do today, or a tile or something like that. So.
We also have a question about studio tours. Do you ever offer tours of your studio?
Well, actually, I've been a founding member of the Northeast Iowa Studio Tour, and we have that every October. It's either the first or second weekend of October. We didn't have it last year, but we've had it for, I think, 14 years now or so. And awful lot of artists in the Decorah area open their studios on that weekend, and I've always done that, and we get a lot of people through town, and you can, that's an opportunity not just to see mine, but a lot of other studios in the area, and that's a really nice program. But like I said, my studio is open by appointment. I'm out in the country and I don't just sit there like a retail space, but I'm happy to show people my pictures if they want to, come make an appointment and come out.
Well, Carl, we've got time for one more question. So why don't we end with, besides, I guess, trying to make good friends who are in business, what advice would you give to someone who is dreaming of starting a career as an artist?
Well, I guess I would say that if anything can stop you from being an artist, it will. And you just have to be determined to keep going. And maybe sometimes you won't have much to eat besides, brown rice and vegetables. But, you just have to keep plugging away. It's kind of a game of attrition, and if you can keep at it long enough, you're going to probably get good enough and have enough people following your work, to make ends meet.
Well, thank you everyone for sending in your questions. And Carl, thank you especially for being with us tonight. I'd like to thank again the sponsors to the exhibition, and to remind everyone that the exhibit is open starting this Saturday, June 5th, and running through May 30th, 2022. We're planning several more fun events throughout the year in conjunction with the exhibit. As we mentioned, Carl will be demonstrating printmaking during Nordic Fest in Decorah, and that will take place on July 23rd and 24th. This fall, Carl will lead a mural walk in Decorah, and we're also planning a folk art school class on using digital photos in art. And we plan on welcoming Carl into the building so we can invite you as well to an in-person gallery talk at some point. Carl, I know you have ideas as well, and we'd like to try to offer as many exciting things as we can. You can find out more on vesterheim.org as details become available for those different programs. This concludes this evening's virtual opening preview. You'll also be receiving the post-event email with a full event recording, and a recording will be posted on Vesterheim's YouTube channel as well. Thank you all so much for making Vesterheim part of your evening. And our special thanks to Carl, my colleagues, and our exhibition sponsors for making this event possible so that we could all enjoy a preview of an artist's journey, Carl Homstad, 50 years. Thank you, everyone, and good night.